The fraud hunter who became the target, Detective Amanda Mitchell, had spent 30 years exposing insurance fraud, catching criminals who faked injuries and staged accidents to steal millions. She knew every trick, every lie, every manipulation tactic used to deceive insurance companies, but when her own breast cancer treatment was mysteriously denied by the insurance company she had spent her career protecting, Amanda discovered that the biggest fraud was being committed against her, and she was about to become the investigator and victim in the same case. Welcome to Justice System USA, where we explore the dark side of America's most trusted institutions. I'm your host, and today we're examining a story that asks, what happens when the system you've spent your life protecting becomes your greatest enemy? Tell me in the comments what city you're watching from, and if you believe these stories of institutional betrayal deserve exposure. Subscribe and join our community that demands accountability. The expert who knew every trick. Detective Amanda Mitchell sat in her corner office at Sentinel Insurance Corporation, surrounded by case files that represented 30 years of fraudulent claims she had investigated and exposed. At 52, she was considered the gold standard in insurance fraud detection, with an unprecedented record of successful prosecutions and recovered funds that had saved the industry hundreds of millions of dollars. Amanda was a tall, athletic woman, with steel gray hair cut in a practical bob, sharp blue eyes that missed nothing, and a demeanor that commanded respect from both colleagues and criminals. Her office walls displayed commendations from law enforcement agencies, certificates from professional training programs, and newspaper clippings, documenting her most high-profile cases. Her expertise had been built through a combination of formal education. She held a master's degree in criminal justice and specialized certifications in forensic accounting and hard-won experience, investigating every type of insurance scam imaginable. Amanda could spot inconsistencies in medical records, identify staged accident scenes, and expose fraudulent disability claims with the precision of a surgeon. Sentinel Insurance was one of the largest health insurance providers in the United States, covering over 15 million policyholders across 43 states. Amanda led their Special Investigations Unit, a team of former law enforcement officers and medical professionals who investigated suspicious claims and worked with prosecutors to bring criminal charges against fraudsters. Her team's work was crucial to Sentinel's profitability. Insurance fraud cost the industry an estimated $40 billion annually, and Amanda's investigations consistently ranked among the most successful in terms of both conviction rates and financial recovery. She had personally exposed schemes ranging from fake car accidents to phantom medical clinics, sending hundreds of criminals to prison while protecting honest policyholders from increased premiums. Amanda's approach to fraud investigation was methodical and relentless. She built cases like a prosecutor, gathering irrefutable evidence through surveillance, medical record analysis, financial audits, and witness interviews. Her reputation for thoroughness was so well established that many suspected fraudsters would withdraw their claims rather than face investigation by Amanda's team. The personal cost of her demanding career had been significant. Amanda had never married, citing the time demands and emotional intensity of her work as barriers to maintaining relationships. She lived alone in a modest townhouse in suburban Denver, spending her free time reading medical journals and attending law enforcement training conferences. But Amanda had always found meaning in her work that compensated for personal sacrifices. She saw herself as protecting ordinary families from the criminals who drove up insurance costs through fraudulent claims. Her investigations weren't just about money, they were about maintaining the integrity of a system that provided crucial financial protection for millions of Americans. Amanda's personal health insurance was provided through Sentinel's Employee Benefits Program, a comprehensive policy that she had never needed to use extensively. She maintained excellent health through regular exercise and preventive care, viewing her physical fitness as essential to the demands of her job. That relationship with her employer and her own health coverage was about to become the most complex and devastating case of her career. The diagnosis: the lump in Amanda's left breast was discovered during her routine annual mammogram in September 2023. She had been diligent about preventive care throughout her life, understanding from her fraud investigations how expensive medical treatment could become, and wanting to catch any health issues early. Dr. Sarah Chen, Amanda's primary care physician for over 15 years, called her personally with the mammogram results. "Amanda, we found an irregularity that needs immediate follow-up. I'm scheduling you for a biopsy with Dr. Martinez, one of the best oncologists in Denver. We caught this early, which is always good news." Amanda approached her health scare with the same analytical mindset she brought to fraud investigations. She researched Dr. Elena Martinez's credentials, REVIEWED literature about breast cancer treatment options, and prepared detailed questions about diagnosis and treatment protocols. The biopsy confirmed Dr. Martinez's suspicions. Amanda had stage 2 invasive ductal carcinoma, an aggressive form of breast cancer that required immediate and comprehensive treatment. The recommended protocol included surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation therapy, with an estimated total cost of $180,000 over 6 months. The good news is that we caught this at a very treatable stage, Dr. Martinez explained during Amanda's consultation. The treatment protocol I'm recommending has an 87% 5-year survival rate for your specific cancer type and staging. We need to move quickly, but I'm very optimistic about your prognosis. Amanda felt a mixture of fear and relief. The cancer was serious but treatable, and her comprehensive insurance coverage through Sentinel would handle the substantial medical costs. She had reviewed her policy benefits numerous times during her career, and knew that cancer treatment was fully covered after meeting her annual deductible. Dr. Martinez's office submitted the treatment authorization request to Sentinel Insurance on October 3, detailing the proposed surgery, chemotherapy regimen, and radiation therapy schedule. Amanda expected routine approval within the standard 72-hour review period, allowing her to begin treatment immediately. Instead, she received a letter dated October 8 that would change her life forever. The denial, the letter from Sentinel Insurance, was brief and clinical. After careful review by our medical professionals, your request for breast cancer treatment has been denied. Our analysis indicates that the proposed treatment protocol is not medically necessary for your condition. Alternative, less expensive treatment options are available that would be appropriate for your diagnosis. Amanda stared at the letter in disbelief. She had spent 30 years reviewing similar denial letters as part of fraud investigations, but she had never seen one that was so obviously incorrect. Stage 2, invasive ductal carcinoma, was a textbook case for aggressive treatment, and Dr. Martinez's recommended protocol was standard medical practice. She immediately called Sentinel's Member Services Department to clarify what she assumed was an administrative error. After being transferred through multiple departments, she was connected with Patricia Williams, a medical review coordinator, who explained the denial decision. Ms. Mitchell, our reviewing physician determined that your cancer diagnosis could be treated with less intensive methods. The expensive chemotherapy and radiation protocols requested by your doctor aren't necessary for someone with your specific medical profile. I'm sorry, but that's medically incorrect, Amanda replied, her professional training kicking in. Stage 2, invasive ductal carcinoma, requires aggressive treatment according to every medical standard I'm familiar with. Who was the reviewing physician? I can't provide that information due to privacy policies, but I can tell you that all our medical reviews are conducted by board-certified physicians with expertise in oncology. Amanda requested copies of the medical review documentation, her appeal rights, and contact information for escalating the denial. As someone who had investigated insurance fraud for 3 decades, she knew that legitimate medical reviews were always documented in detail, and that physicians' credentials could be verified through state medical boards. What she received in response to her records request was the first indication that something much more serious than a clerical error was occurring. At Justice System USA, we believe that the most dangerous frauds are often perpetrated by the institutions we trust most. If this story is making you question the systems you depend on, share it with someone who deserves to know the truth. The investigation begins. The medical review documentation that Sentinel provided to Amanda was immediately suspicious to her trained eye. The reviewing physician was identified as Dr. Robert Thompson, board-certified oncologist. But the review contained several red flags that Amanda recognized from her fraud investigations. First, the medical terminology used in the review was inconsistent with standard oncology practice. Dr. Thompson had described Amanda's cancer using outdated classification systems and had made statements about treatment protocols that contradicted current medical standards. Second, the review referenced medical records that didn't exist. Dr. Thompson claimed to have reviewed extensive patient history, including previous cancer screening records from 2018 to 2020. But Amanda had never been screened for cancer during those years and had no medical records from that period. Most damning was Dr. Thompson's medical license information. Amanda used her access to professional databases to verify his credentials and discovered that no physician named Robert Thompson was licensed to practice oncology in any state where Sentinel operated. Amanda was looking at a fraudulent medical review created by a non-existent doctor to justify denying her legitimate cancer treatment claim. Her first instinct was to report the fraud to Sentinel's compliance department, but she quickly realized the implications of what she was discovering. If Sentinel was using fake medical reviews to deny cancer treatment claims, this wasn't an isolated incident or administrative error. It was a systematic fraud scheme that potentially affected thousands of patients. Amanda began conducting an unofficial investigation using the same techniques she had developed over 30 years of exposing insurance fraud. She requested medical reviews for several other denied cancer claims, ostensibly as part of her job responsibilities, and found a pattern of fraudulent documentation that was both extensive and sophisticated. Over the next 2 weeks, Amanda identified at least 40 cancer treatment denials that referenced reviews by physicians who didn't exist or weren't licensed to practice oncology. The fake reviews all used similar language patterns and medical inaccuracies, suggesting they were being generated by the same source. More troubling was the discovery that these fraudulent denials were being approved by senior executives in Sentinel's medical management department. The scheme wasn't being conducted by rogue employees, it was being directed from the highest levels of the company. Amanda realized that she was uncovering the largest insurance fraud conspiracy of her career, with one devastating difference. This time, she was both the investigator and the victim. The personal stakes: while Amanda investigated the fraudulent denial scheme, her cancer was progressing untreated. Dr. Martinez had emphasized that delayed treatment significantly reduced survival rates, and every week of postponed chemotherapy decreased Amanda's chances of beating the disease. Amanda, I understand you're dealing with insurance issues, but we need to begin treatment immediately, Dr. Martinez urged during a follow-up appointment in late October. Stage 2 invasive ductal carcinoma becomes much harder to treat if we delay much longer. Amanda faced an impossible choice. She could pay for cancer treatment out of pocket, depleting her savings and retirement accounts, or she could continue fighting the insurance denial while her cancer advanced. The $180,000 cost of treatment represented nearly everything she had saved over her 30-year career. The psychological impact of discovering that her own employer was committing fraud against her was devastating. Amanda had spent her career believing that she was protecting the integrity of the insurance system, only to learn that the company she worked for was using that same system to deny life-saving medical care to its own employees. She began experiencing symptoms of anxiety and depression that complicated her medical situation. The stress of fighting cancer while investigating fraud was affecting her immune system and overall health, making effective treatment even more crucial. Amanda's few close relationships were strained by her situation. Colleagues at Sentinel were sympathetic but couldn't provide help without risking their own careers. Family members urged her to pay for treatment privately and deal with the insurance issues later. But Amanda knew that accepting fraudulent denial would enable Sentinel to continue victimizing other cancer patients. You can't investigate fraud while you're dying of cancer, her sister Karen told her during a particularly difficult conversation. Pay for the treatment, get healthy, and then expose these bastards. But Amanda understood something that her family couldn't. If she didn't stop the fraudulent denial scheme, hundreds of other cancer patients would be condemned to death by a system that prioritized profits over human life. The pattern. Amanda's investigation revealed that Sentinel's fraudulent medical review scheme was far more extensive than she had initially suspected. Using her access to internal databases and her relationships with colleagues in other departments, she began mapping the full scope of the conspiracy. The scheme operated through a network of non-existent physicians whose reviews were used to deny expensive medical treatments across multiple specialties. Fake oncologists denied cancer treatments, phantom cardiologists rejected heart surgery claims, and fictional neurologists refused to approve brain surgery procedures. The fraudulent reviews were generated by a small team of Sentinel employees who had no medical training but were skilled at creating convincing documentation. They used real physicians' names from other states, fabricated medical license numbers, and plagiarized legitimate medical reviews to create fake assessments. The financial impact was staggering. Amanda estimated that Sentinel had denied over $500 million in legitimate medical claims during the previous 3 years using fraudulent reviews. The money saved through illegal denials was being reported as profits and distributed to shareholders and executives as bonuses. Most disturbing was the discovery that Sentinel specifically targeted employees and their families for denials. The company calculated that employees were less likely to appeal denials aggressively or seek legal representation because they feared retaliation that could cost them their jobs and health insurance. Amanda found evidence that her own cancer treatment had been flagged for fraudulent denial from the moment Dr. Martinez submitted the authorization request. An internal email from Sentinel's chief medical officer specifically identified Amanda as a high-priority denial because her fraud investigation expertise made her potentially problematic if she identified review irregularities. The company she had spent 30 years protecting was trying to kill her because she posed a threat to their criminal scheme. The dilemma. By November 2023, Amanda faced a crisis that tested every principle she had developed during her career. She possessed evidence of massive insurance fraud that was literally killing cancer patients, but exposing the scheme would almost certainly cost her both her job and her health insurance. Moreover, Amanda's cancer was advancing rapidly. Dr. Martinez warned that further delays in treatment were reducing her survival chances significantly, and that some treatment options were no longer available because of the progression of her disease. Amanda, I need you to understand the medical reality. Dr. Martinez said during what had become a weekly consultation about treatment delays. "We've now waited 7 weeks since your diagnosis. The cancer has grown, and we're approaching the point where some of the less invasive surgical options are no longer possible." Amanda was facing a choice between her own survival and her professional obligation to expose fraud that was affecting thousands of other patients. She could accept Sentinel's fraudulent denial, pay for treatment privately, and keep quiet about the scheme to preserve her employment and insurance coverage, or she could expose the fraud while risking her job, her coverage, and potentially her life. The decision was complicated by Amanda's realization that she might be the only person with the expertise and access necessary to prove Sentinel's criminal activity. Her 30 years of fraud investigation experience had given her unique skills for documenting the scheme, and her position within the company provided access to evidence that outside investigators couldn't obtain. Amanda also understood that, if she died before exposing the fraud, Sentinel would continue victimizing cancer patients indefinitely. Her death would eliminate the primary threat to their scheme and allow them to expand their illegal denials to even more patients. "I can't fight cancer and fight insurance fraud at the same time," Amanda told her sister during another difficult family conversation. "But I also can't die knowing that other people will be murdered by this system." The choice. Amanda made her decision on November 15th, exactly 6 weeks after receiving her fraudulent denial letter. She would expose Sentinel's insurance fraud scheme while simultaneously fighting for her own life, understanding that success in either battle was far from guaranteed. Her first step was to document all evidence of the fraudulent medical review scheme using forensic investigation techniques she had developed over 3 decades. Amanda created encrypted copies of internal emails, fake medical reviews, financial documents, and employee communications that proved Sentinel's criminal activity. She also began building relationships with attorneys who specialized in insurance fraud litigation and whistleblower protection. Amanda needed legal representation that could protect her from retaliation while pursuing both criminal charges against Sentinel and civil litigation to recover damages for affected patients. Most importantly, Amanda started her cancer treatment, using her personal savings while continuing to fight the insurance denial through official appeal processes. She couldn't afford to delay treatment any longer, but she also couldn't abandon her investigation of Sentinel's fraud scheme. Dr. Martinez adjusted Amanda's treatment protocol to accommodate her professional obligations, scheduling chemotherapy sessions during evenings and weekends when possible. The modified schedule was less than ideal medically, but it allowed Amanda to continue her fraud investigation while receiving life-saving medical care. The exposure. Amanda's whistleblower complaint was filed with the Department of Justice on December 3, 2023. Accompanied by over 2,000 pages of documentation proving Sentinel's systematic fraud scheme. The complaint detailed fake medical reviews, non-existent physicians, fraudulent denials, and the financial benefits that Sentinel executives had received from illegal claim denials. The DOJ investigation began immediately, with federal agents executing search warrants at Sentinel's corporate headquarters and regional offices. Amanda provided ongoing cooperation with investigators while continuing her cancer treatment and maintaining her employment at Sentinel. To avoid suspicion, the investigation revealed that Sentinel's fraud scheme was even more extensive than Amanda had discovered. Over 8,000 legitimate medical claims had been fraudulently denied during the previous 5 years, affecting cancer patients, heart surgery candidates, and other critically ill individuals whose treatment had been delayed or denied through fake medical reviews. Several Sentinel executives were arrested and charged with wire fraud, mail fraud, and conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud. The company's stock price collapsed as news of the criminal investigation became public, and federal regulators began proceedings to revoke Sentinel's insurance licenses in multiple states. Amanda's role as the primary whistleblower made her a target for retaliation from Sentinel executives and shareholders who lost millions when the fraud scheme was exposed. She received death threats, had her personal information published online, and was subjected to surveillance by private investigators hired by Sentinel's legal team. At Justice System USA, we honor the courage of whistleblowers who risk everything to expose institutional corruption. Amanda Mitchell's story reminds us that sometimes the price of truth is measured in both money and blood. The trial. The federal prosecution of Sentinel Insurance executives began in August 2024, with Amanda serving as the government's primary witness. Her testimony detailed how the fraudulent medical review scheme operated, how many patients were affected, and how much money Sentinel had stolen through illegal claim denials. Amanda's medical expertise and fraud investigation experience made her an exceptionally credible witness. She could explain complex medical terminology to jurors, demonstrate how fake reviews differed from legitimate ones, and calculate the financial impact of Sentinel's criminal activity with mathematical precision. The defense attorneys attempted to discredit Amanda by arguing that she was a disgruntled employee seeking revenge against Sentinel for denying her own medical claims. They portrayed her as someone who had fabricated evidence to support a frivolous lawsuit and who was motivated by personal financial gain rather than concern for other patients. Amanda's response was devastating to the defense case. She explained that her 30-year career had been built on exposing exactly the type of fraud that Sentinel was committing, and that her professional reputation and expertise were the reasons why her evidence was so comprehensive and compelling. "I've spent my entire career catching people who lie to insurance companies," Amanda testified. "I know every trick, every scheme, every way that fraudsters try to steal money from the system. When I discovered that my own employer was using those same techniques to deny medical care to cancer patients, I did what I've always done. I gathered evidence and exposed the truth." The trial lasted 3 months and resulted in convictions for all Sentinel executives involved in the fraud scheme. Sentences ranged from 5 to 15 years in federal prison, and the company was fined $2.3 billion for its criminal activity. The personal victory: Amanda's cancer treatment was ultimately successful, though the delays caused by Sentinel's fraudulent denial had made her recovery more difficult and reduced her long-term prognosis. Dr. Martinez had been forced to use more aggressive chemotherapy protocols because of the treatment delays, resulting in more severe side effects and a longer recovery period. "You're cancer-free, but you'll need ongoing monitoring for the rest of your life," Dr. Martinez explained during Amanda's final treatment appointment. "The delays we experienced because of the insurance issues made this more complicated than it should have been, but you responded well to treatment and your prognosis is good." Amanda's legal victory against Sentinel included a $15 million whistleblower award and a separate civil settlement that covered all of her medical expenses and compensated her for the retaliation she had experienced. The financial recovery was significant, but Amanda knew that no amount of money could compensate for the risks she had faced because of delayed cancer treatment. More important to Amanda was the systematic change that resulted from her whistleblower complaint. Federal regulations were strengthened to prevent fraudulent medical reviews. Insurance companies were required to provide detailed physician credentials for all claim denials, and new oversight mechanisms were established to monitor suspicious denial patterns. The Sentinel case also led to criminal investigations of other major insurance companies, resulting in additional fraud prosecutions and billions of dollars in recovered funds for patients who had been illegally denied medical care. The new mission: after completing her cancer treatment and recovering from the legal battles with Sentinel, Amanda established the Healthcare Fraud Accountability Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to exposing insurance fraud that victimizes patients rather than insurance companies. The foundation provides legal support for patients fighting fraudulent claim denials, trains healthcare providers to identify suspicious insurance practices, and advocates for stronger government oversight of insurance company medical reviews. Amanda's expertise in fraud investigation, combined with her personal experience as a victim of insurance fraud, made her uniquely qualified to lead efforts to protect patients from corporate abuse. She had learned to identify fraud from both sides, as an investigator and as a victim, giving her insights that no other advocate possessed. "Insurance fraud isn't just about fake claims and staged accidents," Amanda explained during a congressional hearing on healthcare reform. "The biggest fraud in the insurance industry is legitimate claims being denied through fake medical reviews and fabricated physician assessments. That's fraud that kills people, not fraud that just costs money." The foundation's work has resulted in successful legal challenges to fraudulent denials, criminal prosecutions of insurance executives, and policy changes that have saved thousands of lives by ensuring access to legitimate medical care. The ongoing battle: 5 years after exposing Sentinel's fraud scheme, Amanda continues her work investigating insurance companies that use fraudulent practices to deny medical care. Her foundation has identified similar fraud schemes at dozens of other insurance companies, leading to multiple federal investigations and billions in recovered damages. The insurance industry has responded to Amanda's advocacy with both reform efforts and retaliation attempts. Some companies have improved their medical review processes and hired legitimate physicians to assess claims. Others have intensified their efforts to conceal fraudulent practices and have attempted to discredit Amanda's work through propaganda, campaigns, and frivolous lawsuits. Amanda's health remains stable 5 years after her cancer treatment, though she continues to require regular monitoring and has experienced some long-term effects from the chemotherapy that was necessitated by treatment delays. Her doctors believe that earlier treatment would have reduced these complications, making her ongoing health issues a permanent reminder of Sentinel's criminal activity. But Amanda has found meaning in her survival that extends beyond personal recovery. Every patient who receives legitimate medical care because of her advocacy work represents a life saved by her decision to fight both cancer and corporate fraud simultaneously. "I survived cancer, but more importantly, I survived becoming A victim, Amanda reflects. The same skills that made me good at catching insurance fraudsters made me effective at fighting the fraud when I became the target. Sometimes the best way to solve a case is to become part of it. The legacy Amanda Mitchell's story illustrates the complex relationship between institutional expertise and personal vulnerability. Her 30 years of experience investigating insurance fraud gave her unique qualifications for exposing Sentinel's criminal scheme. But it also made her a target for retaliation when she discovered that her own employer was victimizing her. The case demonstrates how insider knowledge can be both a professional asset and a personal liability. Amanda's expertise in fraud detection was precisely what Sentinel feared when they decided to target her for fraudulent denial. But it was also the skill set that enabled her to expose their criminal activity and protect other patients. Most importantly, Amanda's experience challenges assumptions about institutional trustworthiness and the nature of insurance fraud. The biggest fraud in the healthcare system wasn't being committed by patients filing false claims, but by insurance companies creating false medical reviews to deny legitimate treatment to people fighting for their lives. Her legacy continues through the Healthcare Fraud Accountability Foundation and the federal regulations that were strengthened because of her whistleblower complaint. Thousands of cancer patients have received life-saving treatment that would have been denied under the fraudulent system that Amanda exposed and dismantled. But perhaps Amanda's most important contribution was proving that victims can become their own most effective advocates when they possess the knowledge and courage to fight systems designed to exploit them. The fraud hunter who became the target ultimately became the protector of everyone who faces the same battle she survived. This has been Justice System USA, where we expose the institutional frauds that prey on America's most vulnerable citizens. Amanda Mitchell's story reminds us that sometimes the greatest criminals are hiding inside the systems we're taught to trust, and that expertise can be both a target and a weapon in the fight for justice. What did you think about Amanda's choice to fight cancer and corporate fraud simultaneously? Have you ever discovered that an institution you trusted was working against your interests? Share your thoughts in the comments. And tell us what city you're watching from. If this story opened your eyes to the reality of insurance fraud against patients, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to understand how these systems really work, and subscribe to Justice System USA for more investigations into institutional corruption that affects us all. Remember, sometimes the people who know the system best are the only ones who can fight it effectively when it turns against them. Until next time, question everything, especially the institutions that claim to be protecting you. See you in the next story.